Alors, notre cher Dima Arqan de Cercle de Palestine qui va intervenir sur Zoom, et elle est disponible? D'accord. Dima, tu es là?
Bonjour.
Je l'entends pas. Ah, je mets mon casque. Bonjour Dima.
Bonjour.
Ah, ok.
Merci
Alors,
beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je suis très contente de voir les amis, même par Zoom. Mais je vais continuer en anglais et je vais enlever la caméra, comme ça sera plus stable pour la connexion. Alors, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry I couldn't join you in person because of COVID-19 complicated protocols that restricted travel opportunities. Thanks to new technologies, our universe has really become a little global village where we can communicate with each other, no matter how remote we are or what corner of the planet we live in. I really love the notion of a Mediterranean basin becomes more democratic, sustainable, and of a coherent societies. I love it only because it addresses fundamental needs of people everywhere and of around the Mediterranean at large, but also because it reflects what we, the Palestinian people, need and look forward to attain today before tomorrow. I come from a nation, the Palestinian people, who have high democratic values, but our right is denied to live in democratic system when our land is still under Israeli military occupation. And our Palestinian National Authority, since Oslo, is having powers and influences minimized day after day. We admire this sense of partnership among the Mediterranean countries. And I do hope that we all learn one important, I would say very important, lesson from COVID-19, which brought the whole world together in the face of challenges we all faced as a result of this pandemic. In the OSCE Mediterranean Conference last year, His Excellency Bartolo, the Foreign Minister of Malta, raised a quote he took from the Helsinki Final Act, which said, "Security in Europe without security in the Mediterranean is nothing but an illusion." I would also add to the statement by adding another perspective and say that security in Europe and Mediterranean without security in Palestine and Israel is also nothing but an illusion as well. The Arab-Israeli conflict is one element that can disturb stability and security not only in the regional countries on the Mediterranean and Europe, but also over the world. Therefore, the COVID-19 challenge that put all our acts together should serve as an example for all of us to work in full partnership to remove this challenge to stability. Only by resolving this conflict, the Mediterranean countries, including those on the southern edge of the European continent, the northern edge of Africa, or the eastern edge of Asia, where the core conflict is, can stability, cohesive, and quiet can prevail all around the Mediterranean. Lessons we should learn from what COVID-19 pandemic did was the ability of diverse states with different interests and agenda to unite for one major mission of protecting their constituencies from the horrible pandemic that almost paralyzed the whole world. While inequality has existed over the past decade or so, mostly between the northern and southern sides of the Mediterranean, in our region, this inequality has been there since the rest of our Palestinian homeland fell under Israeli occupation in '67. This has been such a long era of inequality in all forms of life. The Mediterranean basin countries at large witnessed variant increasing or decreasing levels of inequalities. I would mention maybe income inequalities due to the political instabilities, springs, weak internet infrastructures, but also we have education inequalities, health inequalities, socioeconomic inequalities, especially gender. So we are facing discriminations against women, children, youth, elderly, refugees, and immigrants as well. And if they are women, it's also even worse, creating new forms of inequalities. But in our case here in Palestine, we have been systemically vulnerable to continuous decrease in inequality. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed how badly vulnerable we became to Israeli inequality towards Palestinians. As an occupying power, of course, Israel has obligations under the Fourth Geneva Convention to provide protection to the people under military occupation from whatever natural or humanitarian disasters. COVID-19 was distractors for us as Israel failed to cooperate with Palestinian bodies. It even failed to enforce strict lockdowns on areas between people commuted between Israel and the Palestinian territories. I know some of you might say that we are always having the habit of blaming Israel, but the PA areas have no external borders with anyone other than Israel. We are like an island that has no link to the outside world but through Israel. Even our crossing points with Jordan are monitored and controlled by the Israeli authorities. I have strong reasons to assume that had the PA been fully in charge of our borders with the outside world, the lockdown enforced in the PA areas would have also included the crossings with Jordan and Israel and could have subsequently led to limiting the pandemic spread. When vaccines also were produced, we also suffered another type of inequality at the hands of Israel, which was the first country to acquire sufficient amounts of vaccine shots. Israel officials at that time about their interests in the security of their own people and distanced themselves from any responsibility towards the Palestinian population in the occupied territories. Although the Fourth Geneva Convention places such a responsibility on the occupying force. And Israel couldn't care less about the Palestinians under the occupation. Here we received the vaccine shots with a remarkable delay after the Israeli, yet we also managed to cope with the challenges by means of strict enforcement of protocols. In short, a close cooperation between Israel and the PA government could have saved lives of dozens of Palestinians, unfortunately. The same, regardless of the outcome, Israel failed to honor her obligations under international law and mostly the Fourth Geneva Convention. If all countries managed to unite against the pandemic, why can't they unite to help Palestinian people to eliminate the occupation? So pandemic we have been subjected to for more than 5 decades. I assume some of you may think my words have come out of the context of the situation in Palestine, as daily events on our corner of the universe may not receive the proper media coverage in your countries. But believe me when I tell you, we all sit on a power knock to a time bomb.
Ah, d'accord.
Vous m'entendez, non?
Oui, Dima.
D'accord. Okay. We continue to believe, of course, that this to keep maybe the story shorter, because online intervention is a bit taking a lot of time. So allow me to finish with the following, maybe depend that I pledge maybe on our Mediterranean neighbors to know on the knock on the table and remind all governments that it cannot always get away with with all the breaches of international law, and without ongoing stopping the Palestinian freedoms and rights. So this is some of the recommendations. Maybe I would be adding to the general recommendations that we always maybe introduce for inequalities, like having inclusive public policies and introducing all these participatory approaches. So what we are facing, in addition to the COVID-19, the occupation, which is really adding another layer of inequalities to our daily life. So, and I will be providing the detailed intervention with all the numbers and the examples as well to the coordinators, so we could provide it to all the group in written.
Merci Dima, merci pour ton intervention.